Wanting to explore the corrosive effects of being in the public eye, Redford starred in the 1972 film The Candidate. He plays a liberal lawyer who runs for office and sells out his idealism for a chance at success. Redford had to fight to do a project of substance.
Even with a big star of Butch Cassidy, we were turned down by 11 studios.
Redford finally convinced Warner Brothers to back The Candidate, though with less than a $2 million budget, it lent itself to a documentary-style approach.
I was more interested in getting underneath the myth that we were being given as to what the truth was.
I wonder if anybody understood what I was trying to do. Don't worry, son, it won't make any difference.
In that film, it was going to be how we get people elected in this country. And the answer is cosmetics.
Okay, now for starters, we got to cut your hair in 86 sideburns.
We wanted to say, this is how politicians can change and not realize that he's changed. That shift from total principle to modified principle.
Those early hard statements of his are turning into mush. Specific policies dissolve into old generalities. The voters are being asked to choose McKay the way they choose a detergent.
You tone down your most extreme positions when it looks like you have a chance.
Redford has long been aware of the power of his celebrity, and though he hasn't actually run for office.
Have you ever given any consideration yourself to actually running for public office?
No way.
He's used his fame to support other politicians and has mastered the art of getting his own voice heard.
The candidate wants you to come join him at a mall because they want to draw a crowd, not because they think you're worth anything. They want to use you as a commodity, and you say, okay, well, if that's the way it is, then I'll use you. I'll come if you tell me you'll do something for the environment. It starts to become a trade-off.
Since the early 70s, Redford has been a strong environmentalist, involved in landmark pieces of legislation, like the Clean Air Act.
It's just hard to believe they really didn't have environmental laws before 1970. And that coincided with Robert Redford becoming a major figure in America. I don't think there's a single person in the country that could speak on environment with the same force that he could.
Federal land is your land. This is Robert Redford asking you to help us keep it free.
Redford started writing letters for us to our membership, and within several months, we had over 100,000 new members.
You realize you have to fight for something you should have to fight for. That's sad, that's frustrating. It's driven me crazy. I'm not going to stop because it's all I can do.
He didn't want to do the way we were. He really didn't. Every fiber in his being resisted.
I just didn't want to do it. I felt that character was a symbol for Barbra Streisand to just have a love object.
Fresh from the success of his edgy film, The Candidate, in which he explored the line between image and substance, Robert Redford at first resisted a Hollywood project that would exploit his own golden boy image.
He did not want to be a pretty boy, a golden boy. Oh, God, you're so handsome. The guy to whom everything came easily. The blonde prince. People started sticking all of that on him.
And so I turned it down a couple of times, but Sidney hung in on it. He said, I just know.
I just wouldn't take no. The night before, he said yes. We stayed up together till 2 in the morning and drank a lot of wine, and he was so in pain. He was like a man about to be hanged, and he just said, oh, okay, I'll do it.
2 hamburgers, 2 cheeseburgers, and 4 Cokes. Yeah, and the Cokes.
It's a perfect love story because they became mythical, those two characters. The prince and the ugly duckling, the haves and the have-nots. 2 characters in which both sexes could identify with both.
Mustn't be too serious.
Everyone loved The Way We Were, and it was one of Redford's biggest hits yet.
It's to me the most just romantic thing that I'd ever seen. I could sing the song. I wouldn't do it to you, but...
But he wasn't interested in seeing himself as a sex symbol.
He had a bad taste in his mouth. I don't think he saw the picture for 3 or 4 years. I know Lola, his wife, at the time, finally went to see it and said to him, you ought to see it, Bob. It's pretty good.
Bad taste or not, Redford was box office gold, and months after The Way We Were was released, he starred in the smash hit The Sting with Paul Newman. The Sting was nominated for 10 Academy Awards, and at age 36, Redford was riding a wave of success rarely equaled in Hollywood. Women responded to him as a sex symbol, and men as the buddy of Paul Newman.
Your boss is quite a card player, Mr. Perry. How does he do it?
cheap.
But his attention was on more important things. While heading to the 1972 Democratic Convention in Miami to promote his film The Candidate, Redford heard rumors among the political reporters that there was something big brewing in Washington.
While we were traveling between stops, this conversation I overheard between the political guys kibitzing about the Watergate break-in, which had just occurred two weeks before. There was a real cynical kind of murmur going through, but they knew exactly who was probably responsible. It was the committee to re-elect the president. It's going to go to Nixon. And when I heard this, I thought, aha. And they said, well, don't worry, it's not going to come out. And I said, it's not going to come out? And they said, no. And I said, why? And they said, are you kidding? No one wants to be on the wrong side of this guy when he gets in. And I got really upset by it, and they accused me of being naive. I didn't understand the newspaper business, investigative journalism, which was true.
Redford had an eye on the story before it was a story.
I watched the papers, I hawked them. And suddenly there were these little blurbs that appeared, special from the Washington Post. And this was the season that Hank Aaron hit his home runs. And I began to cheer these guys, I didn't know who they were, hoping that it would rise to the level of Hank Aaron's importance. I didn't have any idea what was going to happen.
Redford contacted Woodward and Bernstein before they were household names and suggested that they retell their story for the book version from the point of view of reporters on a quest, rather than from the perspective of the burglars, as they had originally planned.
Before we wrote the book, he called me up and said the story of Watergate is the reporting of it.
He certainly
laid the seeds for the way we did All the President's Men.
Redford watched along with the rest of the nation as the two unknown journalists helped bring down the presidency.
I think he liked the defiance of it, that you are truly the lonely figures pursuing this story, that no one is making it easy. You've got to get the goods.
After buying the rights to Woodward and Bernstein's book for $450,000 before it was written, and hiring director Alan Pakula,
the essence of investigative reporting is make people say things they don't want to say and tell you things they don't want to tell you.
Redford set about making one of the most highly regarded films of the decade.
And Redford is in that from beginning to end, behind the scenes and in front of the camera.
It took 4 years to get that film, and I lived with these guys down in Washington for a while, used their notes.
White House.
Howard Hunt, please.
He would call me during the filming.
Who's Charles Colson?
And say, we're stuck. What happened at this point? What really happened? Redford was always driving toward the reality, literally taking the trash from the Washington Post and shipping it out to Hollywood and putting it in their reduplicated newsroom. It just jumped at you. This is the Washington Post.
Woodward, Bernstein, you're both on the story.
All the President's Men stands up so beautifully even today. It is just a model of impeccable craftsmanship.
The public responded to the film, and it grossed $7 million in its first 7 days of release. Woodward and Bernstein were seen as heroes, and Redford and Pakula's portrayal of Watergate became people's impression of history.
People think and say, I know about Watergate, I've seen this movie, and there is a historical record, but people remember a movie.
Redford had hit a home run with All the President's Men. But after years of acting and producing, at age 43, he decided to stretch himself as an artist and try his hand at directing with the 1980 film Ordinary People.
I always felt badly about giving up art. And then I realized I hadn't. I just pulled it up forward into a new thing called directing, with the performing side of myself and the artist that wanted to paint the picture, tell the story through imagery and style. I really saw the film so clearly in my head, and wanted so badly to do it just the way I had it in my head. Just to be given that chance was all I asked for. I was left alone, and I was completely confident. Don't know why. Just was.
The film tells the story of a family struggling to endure after the loss of a child.
The family in that film is on the surface your basic, beautiful, lost, middle-class, happy family. Sure they are.
Can't you see anything except in terms of how it affects you?
He goes underneath to show you a completely different story. The placid surface, it seems to be perfectly framed as in photographs, and then you find out how wobbly everything is behind or underneath it. It was so unexpected that the man who you knew as a Sundance Kid would be able to turn around and make something of such restraint, of such understated dramatic power and of such reverberation.
Redford was nominated for Best Director for Ordinary People.